For these 6 adventurers, the wilderness was their sanctuary and passion, the place where they felt most alive. But somewhere in America's most beautiful national parks, something went terribly wrong. These are the stories of hikers who vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions and families who refused to give up hope. It was September 15th, 2014, and the morning mist clung to the towering Douglas firs of Olympic National Park as Marcus Rivera adjusted his camera settings one final time. The 29-year-old nature photographer had driven 12 hours from his Portland apartment, his Toyota 4Runner packed with $15,000 worth of professional equipment and enough supplies for a week in the wilderness. The 922,000-acre park stretched endlessly before him, its ancient rainforests and rugged coastlines offering the kind of pristine beauty that had made his career. Marcus had built his reputation capturing remote wilderness areas that few photographers dared to explore. His Instagram following of 50,000 nature enthusiasts eagerly awaited each expedition, and his prints sold in galleries across the Pacific Northwest. This trip to Olympic's interior represented his most ambitious project yet, documenting old-growth forests that had stood for over 1,000 years. His girlfriend Sarah had kissed him goodbye at 5 a.m., making him promise to check in daily via his satellite communicator. She knew his tendency to lose track of time when the perfect shot presented itself, but 5 days was his absolute limit before she'd start worrying. Marcus had laughed, showing her his meticulously planned route and the GPS coordinates he'd researched for months. The weather forecast couldn't have been better. Clear skies and temperatures in the mid-60s for the entire week. Marcus felt invincible as he shouldered his 40-pound pack and headed toward the Hoh River Trail system, his boots crunching on the dew-covered forest floor. On September 17th, Marcus sent his routine check-in message from coordinates deep in the park's interior. "Found incredible photographic opportunities," he texted Sarah. "Planning to extend stay by 1 day. The light here is absolutely magical." It was the last communication anyone would ever receive from him. 2 days later, when Marcus failed to return as promised, Sarah contacted park rangers. The search team that located his campsite on September 21st found a scene that defied explanation. His tent remained perfectly set up, guy lines taut and rain fly secure. Inside, his sleeping bag lay neatly arranged, and his camp stove sat ready for the next meal. Canned food, energy bars, and water purification tablets remained untouched, enough supplies for several more days. But Marcus's expensive camera equipment had vanished completely. His Canon 5D Mark IV, 3 professional lenses worth $8,000, and his carbon fiber tripod were nowhere to be found. Strangely, his wallet, driver's license, and emergency cash lay undisturbed in his tent's vestibule. The search team discovered footprints leading away from the campsite toward a steep ravine carved by centuries of rainfall. The prints were clearly Marcus's, size 10.5 Merrell hiking boots with a distinctive tread pattern. But after 200 yards, the trail simply vanished, as if he had been lifted from the earth itself. Over the following 3 weeks, more than 100 volunteers joined professional rescue teams in scouring 500 square miles of dense forest. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging flew grid patterns over the canopy, while search dogs followed scent trails that led nowhere. Marcus's satellite communicator never activated again, despite its emergency beacon capability. His family maintains a website and Facebook page, sharing his photographs and pleading for information. Sarah still checks her phone every morning, hoping for a message that will never come. It was October 8th, 2015, and the autumn air carried the scent of wood smoke and dying leaves as Sarah Kim and Jessica Torres loaded their backpacks into Sarah's Honda Civic. The University of Tennessee roommates had been planning this weekend getaway for months, celebrating the end of midterm exams with their first overnight backpacking trip. At 22 and 21 respectively, both women were experienced day hikers who had explored dozens of trails around Knoxville, but the Great Smoky Mountains backcountry represented uncharted territory. Sarah, a pre-med student with a 3.8 GPA, had researched their route obsessively. She'd printed topographic maps, studied weather patterns, and even practiced setting up their borrowed tent in her dorm room. Jessica, an art major known for her infectious laugh and fearless spirit, had handled the food planning, packing enough trail mix and instant noodles to feed a small army. Their families knew the plan: hike the Appalachian Trail section through Clingman's Dome, camp at a designated backcountry site, and return Sunday evening for Monday classes. Both sets of parents had expressed mild concern about their daughter's first overnight wilderness experience, but the girls' enthusiasm and careful preparation had won them over. The weather forecast showed possible afternoon thunderstorms, but nothing severe enough to cancel their long-awaited adventure. Sarah's meteorology professor had even assured her that October storms in the Smokies were typically brief and manageable for prepared hikers. On October 9th, fellow hikers encountered the pair near the Forney Ridge Trail around 2 p.m. Witnesses later described them as happy and energetic, making steady progress toward their planned campsite 4 miles ahead. Sarah wore her lucky purple fleece jacket, while Jessica sported the bright orange pack cover that would make her visible from a distance. That evening, an unexpected storm system swept through the mountains with devastating fury. Winds exceeding 50 miles per hour toppled trees across trails, while torrential rain turned gentle creeks into raging torrents. The storm's intensity caught even experienced meteorologists off guard. It was the kind of weather event that occurs perhaps once every decade. When the women failed to return Sunday evening, their worried roommates contacted park rangers. The search team that reached their designated campsite Monday morning found it completely empty, with no signs the women had ever arrived. Their planned route would have taken them across Forney Creek, which had swollen from a gentle 2-foot-wide stream to a 20-foot-wide torrent during the storm. Search dogs picked up their scent along the trail but lost it completely near the creek crossing. The rushing water had obliterated any footprints or other physical evidence, leaving searchers with no clues about what had happened during those crucial hours. Over 200 personnel from Tennessee and North Carolina agencies joined the search effort, making it one of the largest in park history. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging cameras searched the rugged terrain for weeks, while dive teams explored pools and eddies downstream from the crossing point. Their abandoned Honda Civic sat in the Clingman's Dome parking area, containing their identification, emergency contact information, and Jessica's sketchbook filled with drawings of their planned adventure. Both families established scholarship funds in their daughters' names and continue advocating for improved trail safety measures throughout the park system. It was July 22, 2016, and the morning sun painted the peaks of Glacier National Park in shades of gold and crimson as David Mitchell shouldered his military surplus pack for what he hoped would be a transformative journey. The 34-year-old Army veteran had driven 800 miles from his small apartment in Denver, seeking something in the Montana wilderness that 3 tours in Afghanistan had taken from him. David's therapist at the VA hospital had encouraged the solo trek, believing that the Continental Divide Trail's challenging terrain might provide the healing that traditional therapy hadn't achieved. His PTSD symptoms, the nightmares, hypervigilance, and crushing anxiety, had improved slightly over 2 years of treatment, but David still felt like a stranger in his own life. His military training had prepared him well for wilderness survival. 20-pound pack, water purification system, emergency shelter, and enough MREs for 10 days. His family had initially worried about him hiking alone, but David's sister finally convinced their parents that he needed this chance to reconnect with himself. Park rangers knew his planned route, 50 miles along the Continental Divide, with scheduled resupply at a cache he'd arranged near 50 Mountain. His expected return date of July 30th was clearly marked on his backcountry permit, and he carried a GPS device with emergency beacon capability. On July 24th, David stopped at the historic Granite Park Chalet, where he spoke with other hikers about trail conditions and weather patterns. Fellow backpackers later described him as calm and focused, sharing stories about his military service and expressing genuine love for the mountain wilderness. He seemed to have found a measure of peace in the vast landscape. David was scheduled to retrieve his resupply cache on July 26th, but when park rangers checked the location 3 days later, they found his carefully prepared supplies untouched. His GPS device showed his last recorded position near Ahern Pass at 11,847 feet elevation before the signal vanished permanently. On July 25th, a brief but intense hailstorm had struck the high country, creating treacherous conditions on exposed ridgelines. Hailstones the size of golf balls had pummeled the area for 20 minutes, followed by near-freezing temperatures that could incapacitate an unprepared hiker within hours. When David failed to return by August 1st, his sister contacted park authorities. Military search and rescue teams joined civilian efforts, utilizing specialized high-altitude techniques and equipment. His fellow veterans organized their own search parties, refusing to abandon a brother who had served his country with honor. The search covered over 300 square miles of some of the most remote terrain in the continental United States. Helicopters battled unpredictable mountain weather, while ground teams navigated treacherous scree fields and hidden crevasses. David's military ID and dog tags were never found, despite extensive searches of every possible route he might have taken. His disappearance sparked national discussions about mental health resources for veterans and the therapeutic value of wilderness programs. The veteran community rallied around his family, establishing a foundation that sponsors wilderness therapy expeditions for combat veterans struggling with PTSD. It was May 14, 2017, and the red rock canyons of Zion National Park glowed like fire in the afternoon sun as Amanda Chen and Robert Walsh began what they believed would be the adventure of a lifetime. The newlyweds had exchanged vows just 7 days earlier in a small ceremony in San Francisco, choosing Utah's dramatic landscape for their honeymoon instead of a traditional beach resort. Amanda, 26, worked as a software engineer for a tech startup, while Robert, 28, taught high school biology and coached the rock climbing team. Both were accomplished climbers who had spent countless weekends scaling granite walls in Yosemite and Joshua Tree. Their shared passion for vertical adventures had brought them together 3 years earlier at a climbing gym in Berkeley. They had researched Zion's backcountry extensively, planning a 4-day backpacking trip through the remote Kolob Canyon section. Their route would take them through slot canyons and across technical terrain that few tourists ever experienced. Amanda had even taken a wilderness first aid course specifically for this trip, while Robert had upgraded their climbing rack with new protection and ropes. Their families knew the detailed itinerary, and the couple carried a satellite messenger programmed to send automatic location updates every evening. Amanda's parents had initially worried about their daughter's adventurous honeymoon choice, but her obvious expertise and careful planning had reassured them. On May 16th, their satellite device transmitted its routine message: having an amazing time, weather perfect, scenery incredible, on schedule for tomorrow's technical section. The message included GPS coordinates showing they were camped exactly where their itinerary indicated. The next morning, park rangers conducting a routine patrol discovered their abandoned campsite in a state that immediately raised alarm. Their tent remained properly erected with guy lines secure, but personal items lay scattered across the sandy ground as if they had left in tremendous hurry. Most significantly, their climbing gear, ropes, harnesses, protection, and helmets had vanished completely. Flash flood warnings had been issued for the area on May 16th, and evidence of recent high water scarred the nearby slot canyons. Debris lines 8 feet above the canyon floor showed where torrents had raged through the narrow passages, carrying everything in their path toward the Virgin River, miles downstream. Search teams discovered footprints leading toward a technical canyon system known for its challenging rappels and narrow passages. The prints, Amanda's size 7 approach shoes and Robert's size 10 climbing boots, were clearly visible in the sand for 100 yards before disappearing at the canyon entrance, where recent flooding had scoured the rock clean. The search became one of the largest in Zion's history, involving technical rescue teams capable of navigating the park's most dangerous terrain. Helicopters lowered rescuers into narrow slot canyons, while swift water teams searched downstream pools and debris fields. Their families flew in from California, establishing a command center and working around the clock with park officials. Social media campaigns and national news coverage brought unprecedented attention to their disappearance. Their wedding registry was converted to a fund supporting search and rescue operations, raising over $100,000 for equipment and training. The case highlighted the deadly nature of Slot Canyon flash floods and led to enhanced warning systems throughout the park. Despite months of searching and multiple follow-up investigations, no trace of Amanda and Robert has ever been found. Their families continue to visit Zion annually, hoping that someone, somewhere, might have information about what happened during those final hours. It was August 3, 2013, and the thin mountain air carried the scent of pine and granite as Dr. Elena Rodriguez adjusted her field notebook and surveyed the alpine meadow spread before her. The 41-year-old research botanist had obtained special permits to collect samples in Sequoia National Park's remote backcountry, where rare plant species clung to existence in an increasingly warming climate. Elena's groundbreaking research on alpine ecosystem preservation had earned her recognition throughout the scientific community. Her work documenting how climate change affected high-altitude plant communities was considered essential for understanding broader environmental impacts. This expedition represented the culmination of 3 years of preparation and grant applications. The University of California had provided funding for her solo research trip, understanding that her specialized knowledge required her to work alone in areas where few botanists had ever ventured. Elena carried GPS coordinates for specific locations where rare plants had been documented decades earlier, hoping to determine whether these species had survived recent environmental changes. Her department colleagues knew she was an experienced solo researcher who had conducted similar expeditions across the western United States. Elena's methodical approach and extensive wilderness experience had kept her safe during previous trips to remote locations in the Sierra Nevada, Cascades, and Rocky Mountains. She was scheduled to return by August 8th for a presentation of her preliminary findings to the university's Climate Research Committee. Her graduate students had already prepared the laboratory equipment needed to analyze whatever samples she collected during her 5-day expedition. On August 5th, Elena made her final radio check-in, reporting successful sample collection and plans to move to her last research site near Tokopah Falls. Her voice sounded excited as she described finding several plant species that hadn't been documented in the area for over 20 years. 2 days later, when Elena failed to return as scheduled, her department contacted park authorities. The search team that located her research site found a scene that puzzled even experienced investigators. Her scientific equipment lay neatly organized on a flat granite slab. Specimen containers, pH meters, soil sampling tools, and field guides arranged with the precision of someone planning to return momentarily. Her research notes, written in Elena's distinctive handwriting, documented successful collection of 15 different plant species. The samples themselves sat properly preserved in labeled containers, representing hours of meticulous scientific work. But Elena's personal hiking gear, backpack, sleeping bag, and GPS device had vanished completely. Weather conditions had remained stable throughout her expedition, with no storms or unusual events reported in the area. The high-altitude environment above 10,000 feet offered few hiding places, yet Elena seemed to have simply evaporated from the granite landscape. Search teams discovered partial footprints leading toward steep terrain above the tree line, but the rocky surface quickly obliterated any trail. Elena's hiking boots, size 8 Vasque with distinctive Vibram soles, left clear impressions in patches of sandy soil, but the prints led toward vertical granite faces that would challenge even experienced climbers. The scientific community mobilized unprecedented resources to support the search effort. Researchers from multiple universities volunteered their time, while Elena's professional colleagues funded helicopter searches and specialized equipment. Her disappearance sent shockwaves through the botanical research community, where solo fieldwork was considered both necessary and relatively safe. Elena's groundbreaking research was published posthumously, using her collected data and field notes. The university established a research grant in her name, ensuring that her work on alpine ecosystem preservation would continue. Her disappearance led to new safety protocols, requiring researchers to carry satellite communicators during solo expeditions. It was June 19, 2018, and the morning sun illuminated the snow-capped peaks of Rocky Mountain National Park as Thomas Anderson helped his 16-year-old son Kyle adjust his backpack straps for their long-awaited father-son adventure. The 45-year-old former military officer had been planning this trip for months, wanting to create lasting memories with Kyle before his senior year of high school changed everything. Thomas had served 2 tours as an Army logistics officer before transitioning to civilian life as a project manager for a Denver construction company. His military experience had instilled a deep appreciation for outdoor skills and self-reliance, values he was determined to pass on to his son. Kyle, an Eagle Scout with an impressive collection of merit badges, had been hiking Colorado's mountains since he could walk. Their planned route would take them along the remote North Inlet Trail to Lake Nanita, a pristine alpine lake nestled at 11,500 feet elevation. The 15-mile round trip represented a significant challenge, but both father and son had trained extensively, completing several practice hikes with full packs throughout the spring. Kyle's mother had packed extra snacks and reminded them both to check in daily via their satellite communicator. She knew her husband's tendency to push limits and her son's eagerness to prove himself, but their combined experience and careful preparation had eased her concerns. Thomas carried detailed topographic maps, while Kyle managed their GPS device and emergency supplies. The weather forecast showed typical June conditions: warm days and cool nights with possible afternoon thunderstorms. Both hikers wore layers and carried rain gear, understanding how quickly mountain weather could change at high altitude. On June 20th, their satellite device transmitted its scheduled message: "Beautiful weather, successful fishing at planned campsite." Kyle caught his first cutthroat trout. The message included a photo of Kyle grinning beside their tent, holding a 12-inch fish with the pristine lake sparkling in the background. That morning, other hikers encountered the pair near their campsite, describing them as happy and well-prepared for their adventure. Thomas was teaching Kyle advanced wilderness skills, reading topographic maps, identifying edible plants, and predicting weather patterns from cloud formations. The father-son bond was obvious to everyone who met them on the trail. Around 2 p.m. on June 20th, a sudden late-season snowstorm struck the high country with devastating intensity. Temperatures plummeted from 65 degrees to 20 degrees within 2 hours, while 40 mph winds drove horizontal snow across the exposed alpine terrain. The storm's ferocity caught even experienced meteorologists completely off guard. When Thomas and Kyle failed to return by their scheduled date of June 22nd, Kyle's mother contacted park authorities. The search team that reached their campsite found a scene of complete devastation. Their tent had collapsed under 18 inches of heavy, wet snow, while scattered gear indicated they had abandoned their shelter during the storm's peak intensity. Footprints in the snow led toward a steep drainage that offered potential shelter from the wind, but the continuing snowfall had obliterated the trail after 200 yards. The prints showed both hikers moving together initially, but the tracks became increasingly erratic as conditions worsened. The search involved over 150 personnel and became one of the most extensive in park history. Kyle's high school organized volunteer search teams, while Thomas's co-workers funded helicopter operations and specialized equipment. The harsh weather conditions hampered efforts for days, with several rescue team members requiring evacuation due to hypothermia and altitude sickness. Ground teams battled waist-deep snow and sub-zero temperatures while helicopters struggled with visibility and dangerous wind conditions. The search area encompassed over 400 square miles of rugged terrain, including numerous ravines and cliff faces where hypothermic hikers might have sought shelter. Despite months of intensive searching and multiple follow-up investigations, no trace of Thomas and Kyle has ever been found. Their disappearance received national media attention and highlighted the unpredictable nature of high-altitude weather systems. Their family continues to organize annual memorial hikes, bringing together the hiking community to remember both father and son, while supporting legislation for improved emergency communication systems in national parks. Kyle's Eagle Scout troop established a scholarship fund for young people pursuing outdoor leadership training. Thanks for watching. Just when you think you've heard the most heartbreaking wilderness disappearances, we're just getting started. Click the next video for the next stories that will show how unsolved mysteries that haunt families forever.